I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:30. Can we please stand to pledge allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to start the meeting by saying thank you to all the speakers and the people that showed up for Memorial Day, and also the firemen for letting them use the fire station. I wasn't able to make it, but I heard some of our counterparts on the board were there, and I heard it was a good turnout, and again, thank you for everyone that showed. I'd also like to say thank you to a donation that came in for the Pines from Larry Kelly, Kendall Construction, and I'd like to say thank you to the people that have been sponsoring signs over at the Pines. It's coming along. I think we now got like 5 or 6 signs and a couple more coming in. Again, thank you. That's what we're striving to, and we're trying to make things better. That being said, I don't see anyone here for resident comment. I was wondering, Ed, could you approve the warrants?
Approve payroll warrant 19-47, $161,796.07.
In a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Bill warrant 19-46, $271.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Bill warrant 19-47, $987,105.46.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Yep.
Okay, so we have appointments. We have the appointment of Laurie LeBlanc of 10 Madison Ave, Groveland, to the position of the registrar through June 30th, 2019. Laurie here?
So moved.
Okay. Anyone want to discuss it at all? We
I
good?
moved it.
Oh, we moved it?
You make a second? Somebody?
I'll second.
Thank
Any
you.
discussions there then?
Any other discussion on it?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, everyone in favor?
Yep.
Okay. Appointment of Lynn Pappas, 34 Center Street, Groveland, to the Historic Commission through June 30th, 2021.
Yeah, I'll make the motion, appoint Lynn Pappas, Historical Commission through June 30th, 2021.
Second?
Thank you.
Anyone?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Appointment of Dr. Dale Angelico, Hart of 271 Main Street, Groveland, to the Historic Commission through June 30th, 2020.
So moved.
Second?
Yep, I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have discussion and possible vote. We have Representative Lenny Mara to discuss the plans regarding the combined sewer overflow and what it means to the residents who put their boats in the river. Good evening, Mr. Mara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you putting me in on your agenda. I know it's a busy time of year for the town, but this is a vital issue that I think is very timely now. It's a time of year when people are putting boats into the river, as well as kayaks and canoes, and thank you to the members for giving me the time to speak on this. You may have recalled last year that the local media did quite a bit of reporting on raw sewage being dumped into the river, and that still occurs on a regular basis, especially when there's any kind of precipitation like we're having today. And so what I've handed you is a printed sheet of the EPA's website that describes, at the bottom of the first page, describes what a CSO is. It's a combined sewage to overflow. And basically what happens, Mr. Chairman, is that our sewage treatment plants take in water from both runoff, surface runoff, and sewage, and they combine it. It goes into a single pipe. And on a typical day, that's not a problem, but on a day where there's any amount of precipitation, it results in an amount of water where the volume is so great that the sewage plant cannot handle that volume, and so the excess is just dumped untreated into the river. And I want to make sure residents know that this is occurring. That sheet I gave you also describes other ways in which that may happen, both from surface runoff and illicit discharges. but I want to make sure residents are aware of that. But the big focus today is on CSOs, or sewage, combined sewage overflows. And this is not because the plants are being mismanaged or because they're somehow defective. They were actually designed that way. Back then, the philosophy was that the solution to pollution was dilution, okay? And they thought that by dumping the small amount into a river with millions of gallons, that it wouldn't be an issue. But residents should know that there is raw sewage in the river during certain times. And I'm starting to see cars down near the Rocks Village Bridge, I guess the shadow running. Okay, I got Plum Island in my district. People like to go surfing out on Plum Island. And of course, I like to go surfing after a storm. That's when the waves are the best. Well, that's also when the discharges occur. So people ought to be aware of that. And so we are working on that. This leads to the next issue of what are we doing about it. And so we have been very active. And I'm going to give you another handout that gives you some bills that we're working on. And these bills represent what we're going to do in the short term, the medium term, and the long term on this issue. Now, I think the most important thing we can do right now is provide notification so that residents know when it's happening. So the top bill is one of several on this. Representative James Kelquist has Amesbury, Salisbury, Newburyport in his district. I got the ones just south of him. So we combined a bill to require the DEP, the department, to notify residents when these sewage overflows occur. There's another bill submitted by Linda Campbell that would go into a little bit more depth, that would put a time limit on when they have to report it, as well as the severity of it. Now, the second bill is also by Representative Campbell, and she's going to require and get funding for backup generators for these sewage plants, because some of them don't have that. So when the power goes out, these sewage treatment plants can't treat sewage. And so we did get this into the budget. We'll see what comes out of the final budget, but we're hoping this is funded. And lastly, we want to, of course, address the problem itself. So my senatorial colleague, Senator Diana DeZoglio, has a bill to create the Merrimack River District Commission. And this will be a group that meets on a regular basis to discuss ways that we can prevent this from happening in the future. And we don't know how this is going to take form in the future. It could be separating surface runoff from sewage. It could be underground storage tanks. Other states have done that, and they've done it successfully to prevent these overflows. So we're going to have this commission formed hopefully soon to discuss that as well. And keep in mind, Mr. Chairman, that this is doesn't require the federal government to work with us on this. Not only because of the large money that's involved with actually accomplishing this, but this is a multi-state issue. Remember, that Merrimack River begins way up in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. And so cities like Manchester and Nashua, New Hampshire, also dump this raw sewage into the river. In fact, I think they dump more than Massachusetts does. And so it'll be of little value to have Massachusetts provide notification. New Hampshire's not also doing the same thing. So we've been working with the state of New Hampshire as well. And fortunately, we have a new member of Congress, U.S. Representative Lori Trahan. She took over for Nikki Saunders, and her district includes much of the Merrimack River. And she has been instrumental. She's met with us on a regular basis, all with every state rep and state senator in the district, and hopefully she'll be doing something federally. She has a bill to get funding for this, an infrastructure bill, that hopefully someday will actually get passed in Congress. So we're working with her on that, and we hope to work with the state of New Hampshire on getting this done. But I wanted to make this known to make sure residents know that these CSOs do occur and what we're doing about it. And keep in mind, on that first handout I gave you at the very top, there is a web address there. This comes right from the EPA. And anyone who wants to can go to that website to learn more about it. That site also has links on what they can do about it and more information about it as well, if residents are interested. I took the links out just to clean it up a bit. But that was the purpose of the business today, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make this known.
Yeah, have you ever talked to there was a guy in here in the fall, early, late summer, Rocky Morrison? He has a big river cleanup nonprofit.
Okay.
Maybe you can make him aware of it as well, because I know he's after all the needles and all the garbage that comes down the river and what have you. So he was a big advocate on keeping the river clean as well, so.
I did hear about that.
Yeah.
Yes. And there's a couple other groups along with his that are working on that. There was a Merrimack River Watershed Association as well that's
Yep.
working on that. And we're going to follow this up. I'm visiting my boards of selectmen this month, but I think
Yep.
next month we're going to have a public event that's open to the public where we have people like that at this event where people who can answer questions
Yep.
and kind of get some public feedback as well. But we just want to make the public aware of this because, like I said, this is the time of year when people are starting to use the river.
Mhm.
They're fishing, they're swimming, they're boating, and we want to make them aware of the risks.
Thank you. Anyone, go ahead.
I was just wondering if they do any testing to determine the level of contamination, because further upriver, like towards the Rocks Village Bridge and towards Amesbury especially, I know that the boaters, there's a nice shallow area, they all stop in, the kids are swimming, they're in water tubes, and if it's not safe for them to be in the water at that time, there should be a system to let them know. I would think they'd have no idea. We always assume up the river that far, it's probably okay.
We have a quasi system, Kathy. We met with the sewage operators. They came to the State House a couple of weeks ago. And they kind of do it individually. So Haverhill does theirs and Nashua does theirs, but they're not combining on, to answer your question, no, we really don't have good testing on that. So we don't know how many parts per million are in the river at any given time. We don't know the level of contamination. Sometimes we get the number of gallons reported to us after a few days. But once again, these are what I call silos of information, where Nashua kind of reports on their schedule and Manchester reports on theirs. So it's not very helpful. And that's one of the reasons why Senator DiZoglio is creating this commission, so that they can come up with a description of what we really need. And I think it should include what you just mentioned. There should be testing, so that people that are in those areas know when it's safe to swim and when it's not safe to swim. Because my house is right next to the river, and there's a sandbar there now, where boats anchor in the summertime. People get out and actually walk from the sandbar.
Right, that's what I'm saying, they
And I
do.
see little kids playing, and here's what we're seeing, Kathy, is an uptick in the incidence of gastrointestinal disorders
That's
at
what I was wondering.
hospitals on the days following the storm. We're also seeing an increase in the number of dogs going to veterinarians with lesions on their skin. Once again, it follows days like today. And we're not getting a lot of rain today, it's probably less than half an inch, but sewer operators said even a tenth of an inch can sometimes result in a sewage overflow, depending on how quickly the rain comes down. Because they can only handle so much volume of water at any given time. And when the volume exceeds their limit, like I said, they just dump it into the river untreated.
So there's no mandated reporting of these I've read about them before, but they're not mandated to report when this happens?
They are mandated to report, I think, the number of gallons, but I don't think they're mandated to test downriver or upriver to see the level of contamination. So, I could be wrong about that.
But we
I don't-
could test, so
Excuse me?
we could test it, our water and sewer could test it. Right.
Yes, and that's one of the bills that we have here to require DEP
Do it.
to do exactly that. Because we also started to question, what's the best way of reporting? Do we put it on a website somewhere? Do we have the sewage treatment plants report to city halls and town halls? Or do we have DEP be a clearinghouse for this information so that the public can go to that place and see all this information? And I think we're kind of leaning toward that clearinghouse, because that's what other states do. They have a Department of Environmental Protection where the public knows they can go to. But we're also toying with ideas of like a reverse 9/11 system, so that it can be more immediate. Or you've seen perhaps Amber Alerts, where you get a notification on your phone for those kind of alerts. Maybe we can do something like that. Or maybe there's an email notification that people can log on to as well, where they submit their email or phone number to be part of a system that gets reported. We're looking at all these avenues right now, all these options, and hopefully we'll come up with a resolution soon on it.
So I just want to make sure I understand. Right now, though, there is a reporting. They do report when they do this.
Correct, yes.
So we could be informed of that, and our water and sewer department could test and let our residents know.
Our water and sewer,
Department here in town would be able to
Oh,
test
really?
it. Sure, why not?
sure.
And let
Are we
us know.
capable of doing that?
Well,
I'm not sure. Are we capable?
of testing water, they're the water and sewer department, I hope so.
Well, do they test the river, though?
That's what I'm saying, the river.
Well,
We could find out.
Yeah.
it's better than doing nothing, I think.
So I just want to say, I am attending the Merrimack Valley
Thank you.
Kickoff River Task Force meeting in June, so I can report to the board after that meeting and let you know where things stand with that, too.
Thank you, Denise, that'd be great, that'd be helpful.
Right.
Could you address the penalty for noncompliance, like particularly this House Bill 752? Is there a penalty for noncompliance of it?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ed. 752 is the one that's gonna require the backup generator. Well, there'll be a funding mechanism, and we're gonna provide the funding for it, and they're gonna be required to use it for that generator. And I didn't print the whole bill.
I read part of it, but I don't remember any penalty on it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think there's a penalty per se, but we do have a deadline. There is a time structure for that to be done. And there's also further details on requiring the sewage plant operators to keep the generator maintained and up and running and up to date. There is details on that, on the full description of the bill.
But without
I
some,
don't know,
without,
I don't know about any penalty.
without some kind of a penalty, basically useless. If they fail to maintain the generator, okay, so they failed to do it. So there's, but maybe if there was some kind of penalty, there'd be a little bit of teeth in it.
That's a good question. I can find that out. Like I said, I didn't print the entire,
You know, I had read two of these, but
okay.
Anyone else?
and that's the only one that I could see that you're not gonna find the Department
No,
of
we're gonna
Natural
find a way to
Resources.
enforce it, Ed. You're absolutely right. It's of little use if it's not enforced. You're absolutely right, but we will make sure. I think these sewage plant operators are good guys. They have a difficult job. We met with them. They sat with us for almost 2 hours, and they want to comply. In fact, don't forget the EPA, if you read their website, they're required to comply now, and they just don't have the funding for it. But if we provide the funding for this generator, these guys seem amenable to doing it. They want to see their operations work correctly. They want to see the sewage treatment plants up and running. Believe me, they don't like it when their power goes out any more than we do.
What's the estimated cost?
We don't have an estimate yet. It's probably going to send out an RFP, a request for proposal. This is a big operation. It's going to require quite a bit of generation. I don't know if 1 or 2 is going to be needed, but an RFP will probably be sent out to get bids. We're in the process of just getting it through the budget right now. Yeah, it made it through the House budget, and the budget went to the Senate. I don't know what happened there. Don't forget that budget now has to go to the governor, and so he'll have to agree to it as well. We're not done with the budget yet.
And water is a precious commodity. We can also use a sewage treatment plant here in the town of Groveland.
Well, that's how I look at it. This is a basic function of government. You know, we can disagree about a lot of other things, but when I was campaigning, this came up a lot, and rightfully so. People were livid when they read about this in the Newburyport News, because a lot of us just didn't even know about it. We were unaware that this was even happening. And, yeah, this is something that people expect. They expect our roads to be paved, they expect them to be plowed. You guys get your roads plowed every single winter, and people just expect it. You know, we wake up in the morning and they plow. It's not by magic, it's because you guys make it happen. The same thing has to happen here. We gotta fix this. This is something the public relies on. And there's a health issue. This is a public health issue. So that's why I made it a priority. I wanted to make sure I got before you to
I
describe
think
what
Mike
we're doing.
had something.
Yeah, I assume this has been going on for years, if not decades,
Decades.
correct?
That's correct.
So why are we all of a sudden, is this a major issue? I mean, I grew up around here, and it's been going on for decades, and I swam in the Merrimack River, and I'm okay, I think. But why all of a sudden, I mean, I realize the issue, but why all of a sudden, I heard that. Why all of a sudden is this a major issue just to start coming forward? I mean, so it's been written about in the Newburyport News, and maybe more people are kind of concerned about now, but this has been going on for literally decades.
Not to sound cynical, but I think it's what you just said. I think it's hitting the fan now because the Newburyport News reported on it. Okay, if they had reported on it 3 years ago, we probably would have acted 3 years ago. A lot of us were just unaware. Don't forget, that river's come a long way, so when you and I
Right.
were young, factories were still dumping their commercial waste into the river.
Right.
And so shoe factories would dump their waste, so if they were dyeing shoes red that day, the river would be red that day. We cleaned that up a long time ago. Now, for the first time, we have hawks and eagles living on the river. That's great. It's a lot better than it was back in the 1970s.
Right.
But we still have a long way to go. And when these sewage treatment plants were designed, like we just said, it was decades ago. This is part of their design. They knew that if we combine surface runoff with sewage, that sometimes the volume would be so great that we wouldn't be able to handle it. They knew this when they designed the plants. But they thought the dilution would be a solution to the pollution, so that's how it works.
The follow-up to that is, I agree that without substantial penalties on that bill, it becomes useless. And and if the penalties aren't substantial, it becomes like hedge fund guys who get, charged $300 million for not complying, and what do they care? They're making $1 billion. That's a good investment, right? So either there has to be a substantial penalty, or whatever funds you are appropriating to them for the equipment, that has to be not available the following year, or something like that. To force compliance and say, hey, I understand that, this is something you want to do, but this is something you have to do, not want to do. We're forcing you to do this. So I would take that into consideration as well. That's it.
Yeah. Hi, thank you for coming and bringing this to our attention,
Sure thing.
Senator Miro.
Absolutely.
Couple of questions. You said just a moment ago, they're required to now What did you mean by that, and who is required to do what now?
The EPA sent a mandate years ago for this to stop, to stop, to update our sewage treatment plants so that we do not have overflow, so that we do not dump raw sewage into the river. And this is a federal issue. This happened federally. It's something that was handed down by the EPA. I think Congress was a part of it. So I don't have the details on it, Bill, but I think it's just a matter of the city of Haverhill, for instance, is ordered by the EPA, to clean up this sewage treatment plant, but it's going to require hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. And so where does that fall? Does it fall on taxpayers? Does it fall on the ratepayers who buy the water and use the sewer system? Does it fall on the whole state or the taxpayers of the city of Haverhill? I don't know. And so I just started reading into the details of it on the EPA website. If you go to it, you can read more details about that. But this is going to require federal intervention. And, unfortunately, the feds just haven't been very effective at getting things done lately. It could be part of an infrastructure bill that they've been talking about for a long time. Usually infrastructure is roads and bridges, maybe mass transit, but this is also part of infrastructure. It's a vital piece of infrastructure. We rely on this not just for recreation, Bill, don't forget, it's also a source of drinking water for hundreds of thousands of people. So it's something we have to clean up. And I'm not sure how and why the EPA doesn't have enough teeth in their, requirements, but these sewage treatment plants are supposed to clean this up, and it just hasn't happened yet. So we want to make sure this becomes a priority at all levels of government. When we meet on this, we're meeting with mayors of those big cities. I mean, you don't have a sewage treatment plant that's doing this, but Haverhill does, I think Lawrence does. We've met with mayors, and we're starting to meet with the ones up in New Hampshire as well. So that's municipal government. We got the state legislators on board, and we have a congressperson, Lori Trahan, that's working with us on this as well. It's all three levels of government on 2 states. And so as you can imagine, that's a lot of wheels in motion. It's going to take quite a bit of effort to finally resolve this.
Right, and most, if not all, this is water treatment, sewage treatment plants are municipally owned, government owned. They're not
I think
privately
they're
held.
like a quasi-government agency. I'm not sure if the cities own them, but I think they're kind of like their own entity.
Okay, I know when I
It's a
worked
quasi-government agency.
in that industry, we would do things called build, own, and operate. We would
Yeah.
build it, own it, and operate it, and charge the municipality X amount for,
Yeah, that could
treatment
be.
or water.
Yeah.
Is anything, any thought being given to the tributaries that feed the Merrimack from the White Mountains on down? Because if you're not going to, I guess, address those,
Yeah.
you still have a problem.
That's a
right?
good question. I think that falls under the illicit sewage discharges. If you read the description there, and there's more details on this on the actual website, and they provide links to it, I think that's what happens. I think people, perhaps up in the White Mountains and other places, just have a discharge illegally. Instead of hooking up to the sewage system like they're legally required to do, or putting in a septic system, I think there's a lot of buildings and perhaps residents that do just dump directly on the ground. Runoff ends up being in a tributary. That tributary ends up in the Merrimack. So that is happening. It absolutely is happening.
Right, now, with the current administration in Washington rolling back a lot of the environmental regulations that were once in place, you see the funding for this happening at any time in the near future?
Oh, I don't know. I couldn't answer that question. I mean, I wish we had our congressional delegation here on a more regular basis. Anytime I'm before them, that's the first question I ask. What is the deal on an infrastructure bill? I ask that of my Congressman Seth Moulton, and I ask Lori Trahan all the time. And I never really get a firm answer. They want to see it as much as anyone. I'm sure every congressman in every state wants to see that infrastructure bill happen. But it's just been, there's been a lot of turmoil, and it's just not getting done, to make a long story short. But, yeah, it does need to happen. This is vital. This is something people rely on government to do. This is why they pay their taxes, and it's unfortunate that's not happening on a more regular basis.
Right, last thing we want is another Flint, Michigan, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's the last thing we want. Nobody wants to see that.
Senate Bill 457, an act to create a Merrimack River District Commission.
Yes.
Those going to be paid positions? Are we adding a layer of bureaucracy to this? where we're gonna have tremendous salaries? Or this is gonna be a non-salary position, like a volunteer effort?
I don't know if it'd be a volunteer system, Ed, or if it will be people that are appointed that are already leaders, members of the DEP, members of the Water Quality Control Board. So, you know, we're on committees all the time, and so I'm on 3 committees. I don't get extra pay for that committee. And I'm on the Merrimack River Beach Alliance, you know, that's something else. We're not paid to be there.
Okay, so this isn't gonna be, you're not gonna create some political jobs here for this.
Well, I hope not.
The district commission. You hope not, but you can't say that it's not gonna happen.
Yeah. No, I can't, honestly. I wish I could look at you, Ed, and say,
And I'll tell you,
"Yeah, I promise it'll never happen."
it
I'd love to
probably
say that.
will.
But don't forget, when we cleaned up the Charles River, you know, we created a commission to do that, and it resulted in, yeah, a lot of what you just said, and a lot of water bills went very, very high as a result. But at the end of the day, the Charles River and the Boston Harbor got cleaned up. But yes, what you just described did in fact happen.
That's-
MWRA, I think, I want to say was.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of.
Excuse me?
That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'd like nothing better than the promise that'll never happen, Ed, but I can't honestly say that. But what I do want to say is that even if we do end up with some, you know, bureaucracy, that at the end of the day, that bureaucracy comes through and fixes this problem. Okay, like we did with the MWI. And we, you know, I don't want to say we take this for granted, but we in New England have very good drinking water. If you've ever been to Florida, you'll see what drinking water tastes like when it's not very good. And so I don't want to take that for granted. That's something that didn't happen by mistake. It's happened because of planning, and it happened because government gets its act together and does the right thing and creates reservoirs and water safety standards, and it's something we want to see continue to happen. We have excellent drinking water, both in this town and in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we want to keep it that way.
They have a new stormwater management thing, I believe, too, as far as the towns, all the water draining out into the river.
MS4?
Yeah, and that's all new too as well, so they're getting that under control as well. I know we have to comply with it as a town of Groveland and what have you, and Mike sits here from the conservation, but, I mean, that's also helping what's leaving here
Yeah.
going into the river.
That's correct.
I think
That's
there's a
the-
lot of different things they're working on to try and protect the river.
That's exactly right, Mr. Chairman, and that also, I believe, is an EPA mandate. They're requiring the
Yes.
cities and towns to do that.
Right.
So you have to find, locate all your culverts, and then fix the broken ones that are, you know, dumping improperly. And so, this budget session, I was asked to help fund some culverts for that here in Groveland off of Center Street. And, you know, we'll see what happens with that funding, but it has to be done. All my towns have this problem, and by the way, it's an expensive problem.
It is for us.
Boxford has a lot of this as well, probably even more so than Groveland. But it's an expensive problem in every city and town in my district. And there's an engineering cost, and of course, there's a cost of doing the actual repairs.
Right.
And, yeah, I personally saw some issues on Center Street that need to be cleared up, so.
All right, well, everyone good?
Yeah, I'm all set. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming in.
Thank you for having me.
and thank-
Appreciate it. All right.
Letting
take
us
care.
know. Have a great night. So now we move forward. We have Matt Castaway to discuss the upcoming summer program, to appoint of the summer program employees.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I have to make a copy of somebody's pamphlet.
Hi, Mr. C. Okay.
Good evening, everyone, and I am happy to be with you again this evening to review with you plans for the upcoming summer program. What I passed out to you is a copy of our brochure. Apologize that it's not folded and whatnot. I ran out, so I just copied it off my computer. I also ran out of color ink, so there's some graphics that are missing, but the majority of the text is there. So just want to start off by going through this year's brochure with you, which has a lot of the information for the summer. We will be getting started this year on June 24th, and again, it will be running for 7 weeks at the Bagnell School through Friday, August 9th. If you turn to the flip side of the first page, the About Us just briefly gives an overview for people on what we're about. This is my 16th year involved with the summer program, 15th as director, so I'm feeling really old.
Well, those
But
kids are in high school now, right? The
Sorry.
first ones you had are going through high school now? Is that
Beyond.
beyond high school?
Yeah, graduated college. and-
Really? Jeez.
So this year, we do have the same on-site administrative team as last year, so that continuity is great for us. Brianna Favor will be back as the on-site director, Groveland resident, and currently is a middle school teacher up in Pelham, New Hampshire. And then Cameron Wolbach and Carolyn Modbush will be back again as assistant on-site directors. They've been with the program for many, many years. The next slide talks about this year's tuition. I'm very proud that we continue to be able to offer an extremely affordable program for our families here in town. Between last year and this year, the 3-week and 4-week program only increased by $5 each week, and our 5, 6, and 7-week programs only increased by $4 each week. And that slight increase is obviously to account for the increased minimum wage here in Massachusetts, and then also the small increase that our returnees do receive. The next piece talks about our extended day program that we offer for working families. So our program finishes each day at 3:30, but we are there until 5:30 each day for working parents, and a lot of families do take advantage of that program. The next page just talks about our counselor and training program, which includes children entering 8th grade in the new school year, all the way up through age 15. And again, our slight raise increase from or tuition increase from 2018 to 2019 was only approximately $3.50 per week. The next slide talks about the different activities that we offer each summer at the summer rec program, including our weekly field trips with bonus weeks. So 2 of our 7 weeks have actually 2 field trips in them. And we, again, are returning the group swimming program that we work out with and coordinate with the Haverhill High School swimming pool. Next, you'll see a list of our 2019 field trips, including water country, Chunky's, Codzilla in Boston, a baseball game up in Nashua for the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, Canopy Lake Park, our annual mountains trip that we do each year up in the White Mountains, and then we always close each summer with a trip to the beach and also a bonus field trip. The next page just briefly talks about how families can enroll a payment plan for families. So if you register when we open registration back in the winter, you only need to pay 25% at time of registration, and then at the beginning of every month, another 25% is due until the final payment is due on June 1st. This year's staff information, I'm happy to say that the majority of staff from last year are returning this year. Some summers we have a huge, turnover with staff. This year is not one of them. So we have many of our staff members returning as counselors, and I'll go into specifics with some roles and some role changes in a minute. Just for your knowledge, too, all staff goes through a very specific and thorough orientation that we actually do in this room each June, where it's mandatory that all of our staff members come to the training. We review staff expectations, staff rules. We talk about the program at length and what our plan is for all 7 weeks. We do some anti-bully training with the staff and behavior training with the staff, so staff members learn how to handle some challenging situations with children. And all staff, again, are required to be CPR and first aid certified. So going a little more specifically with staff, we only have 5 new staff members this year, which is very low for us. All 5 staff members worked their way up in the ranks and were all former CITs. So each year, we always look at our former CITs first. We interview any former CIT that applies, and then we do our best to fit them into a position. This year, you know, with only having 5 slots open, we did have to make some difficult decisions, as, you know, last year there was a large amount of CITs that aged out, that were at age 15. So there were some difficult decisions that needed to be made, but ultimately, we feel like the 5 former CITs that we chose, you know, are the best fit for the job. We did give 2 staff members promotions from last year to this year. Riley Gilmore, who was our enrichment coordinator, is now our front desk supervisor. And then Madison Lasiska, who's been a very long-time counselor at our program, we now have her as our enrichment instructor. And then all the other positions were counselor positions that we were able to fill. A couple registration numbers. As of today, we are up to 132 campers registered for this summer. We have 27 CITs registered for the summer. That's a little lower than 2018, but we do often get an influx of registrations with last-minute decision-making and last-minute planning with families as they get their summer vacations ironed out. We did have a good amount of funds left over from last year, so we are able again this year to offer scholarships for those families who qualify. So it's looking like right now we'll be able to offer about 6 to 8 scholarships for families, which is great. We will be making our final decision on that within the next week or so. And, you know, with some of the funding also that was left over, we are able to purchase new sports and game equipment. We will be purchasing a new large water slide, which is quite expensive, so we're excited that we're able to do that for our children this year. And then we, you know, as I'm sure you know, some of the leftover funds, you know, went back to the Bagnell School, which, you know, is very important to us that we are able to do that each year. So with that being said, I will open to any questions you have.
Who wants to start? Mike,
You want me to start?
you good?
No, I don't have much to add, other than same as last year. You know, you do an outstanding job.
Thank you.
You do a great job running the program. It seems to run very smoothly every year, and you give back with scholarships and equipment and Bagnell School grounds, so there's not much I can add. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic job. Every year I get, I have a lot of young children, as you know, so I get tremendous feedback, and I know when things are going smooth and when they're not, and they're always going great. So we appreciate the fine job you're doing, and as well as the contribution you make to help the Bagnell ground system, because money you throw out there does support that as well. People should know that. How's the space thing working out since we kind of straightened it out the last year? You guys all good with the space you have now, Bagnell, no more?
Yeah, there are some changes this summer. You know, they're doing a lot of work, you know, with the asbestos piece.
Yep.
So, you know, that is affecting us, but, you know, they've been great. We've been able to work out some additional rooms for us, so that we should have no issues with space this summer.
Good, good. Other than that, keep up the
You're
good
talking
work.
storage?
We're talking storage. You know, we had an issue last year with storage in the
And
basement.
usage this summer,
Yeah.
but we're making it work, and, you know, they're giving us some other rooms, you know, to make up for the lost space that we have, so we'll definitely be good.
Good, good. All right.
Thank you.
No, I haven't got any questions. All set.
No, echo Mike's comments. It's a great program, and we're lucky to have you here working it for us. I know from when my kids were small, these are very good prices. You can't find this kind of excitement to take your children to for this kind of money. So I think we're lucky to have it, and thank you for doing it.
Definitely are.
I don't really have too much to say. I know that you guys kick in money toward the Bagnell backfields and what have you. As you know, if we play in one area, we'll wear them out more than others, so if you can just keep in mind to kind of rotate around as
Yep,
much as we
yep.
can. If you have any water going, to obviously water on the lawns, because it's only gonna help them. And are we putting any money every year more toward it, or we're just keeping the flat rate that we discussed and that's it?
No, so the summer program funds other things besides the backgrounds. So they pay for some of the asbestos removal in the classrooms
I
and
didn't know
other
that.
upgrades that need to take place in
Yeah, so I didn't
Bagnell.
know that. It'd be nice to let people know so that you
Yeah.
get credit for it, you know? I didn't know that. I thought they were only doing the back of the
Nope,
field.
For the last few years, they've been doing other stuff as well.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. No, I've heard all good things about it, and
Great.
I've never heard any complaints, so, like the rest of the board said,
We like
thank
that.
you, and keep it up.
All right, thank you so much,
All right,
appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wait, do we need to vote something?
Yes, the appointments of his staff.
So is there, do I just make a motion? To appoint the summer staff?
Yep, as presented.
I make a motion to appoint the summer staff as presented for the, what's it called?
2019.
2019 Bagnell Groveland Summer 219 Recreation Program.
Seconded.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Yep.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Okay. Okay, so moving forward on our agenda, we have Michael Nelligan and Kyle Wan from the Powers and Sullivan to present the FY18 audit findings. You may come up and sit and lay all your papers out.
Who is who? Okay.
Thank you very much. For the record, my name is Michael Nelligan. I'm a partner with Powers and Sullivan. My associate is Kyle Warren. He's a manager. The staff that we have on the job is, so Kyle and his team of 2 or 3 others come out for a couple of weeks at a time and do the annual audit. And it went very smoothly this year. And it's been getting better and better the last several years. And rather than, you've seen the management letter, I'm sure. And we've been living with 4 material weaknesses since 2006. And I'm happy to report that those are gone for the first time this year. And hopefully we'll never see them back again. Material weaknesses are situations where the financial statements could be materially misstated because of an error or something occurring. And it's the auditor's responsibility to designate those weaknesses as what we call other matters or significant deficiencies, or if they go on for a long time and they're not being addressed, material weaknesses. And material weaknesses just really mean everybody needs to pay attention to them and get them fixed. And I'm happy to say that the town has finally done that, and they're gone. So I'll come back to the management letter in a few minutes. The financial statements, like I said, we scheduled the audit for a week of planning work back in the summer, usually beginning of the summer or late spring. And then we come back when Denise's team is ready. And this year it was the second week of December. Everything went very smoothly. We had no issues conducting the audit or dealing with any of the personnel. We got everything that we had asked for. We found the accounts reconciled and reconciled on a timely basis. And we had no real adjustments other than, in order to get the financials from the cash basis, modified cash basis that we follow in town to the audited GAAP financial statements, there's a lot of what we call reclassification entries to put things in the right buckets and so forth. So there are, I won't say there weren't any adjustments, but there weren't any unusual audit adjustments, mainly just adjustments to get the financials in a GAAP compliant format. You had no new debt this year. The new GASB standard that was implemented was GASB 75 for OPEB, and we talked about this kind of at length last year because it was just coming out. And the town is just about fully compliant with that. The only reason I qualify that is because the light plant is on a calendar year, and they didn't adopt the new standard. They won't adopt it until 12/31/18, which will go into next year's financial statements. Question?
On the report itself?
No, I just.
No,
you
just
look
keep
like you had a
going.
question on the
No, no, no.
light plan
I'm
stuff.
waiting to,
Okay.
done with your summary. Thank you.
So you're fully compliant with GAP except for that minor little thing. And I just tabbed off about 5 or 6 pages, and I'm just gonna flip to those real quick, and then
Go ahead.
you can ask questions or don't have me go into a little more detail if you'd like. On page 1 and 2 is our audit opinion. It is a clean audit opinion, the best opinion that we can offer. Following that is management's discussion and analysis, and this is about 6 or 7 pages of condensed summary financial information. Talks about what the statements consist of. It gives you comparisons year to year on the governmental activities and the business type activities separately. For the most part, the results for the year were right within plan and what your expectations were. I don't see anything really unusual. The total revenue on page 7 for the governmental activities was $17.8 million versus 17.1 the year before. It was up about 4.5%. Most of that is in real estate taxes and some of the charges for services. The expenses were down $463,000, so you had quite a bit of turnaround in the change in net position, if you will. You went from a negative $755 to a positive $541. Most of the impact of that is pension and OPEB accounting, where you're going to see swings in the expense from year to year in those accounts. So one year, the market's up, you're going to see low expense. Market goes down, or mortality assumptions change or something like that, you're going to see more expense. So a lot of that is smoothed out through the deferred inflows and outflows that you see on the financials, but there still is some impact to that. And we're really not talking about a lot of money on the expense side. They were down 2.6%. But I mean, typically you don't expect to see them go down, but the fact that they went down is related to those pension and OPEB amounts. And then there's the similar discussion on the business type of water, the sewer, and the electric. There's a little blurb about the general fund. I'm going to talk about that in a second. The budget for the year, you had actual revenues exceeded budget in the general fund by $224,000, and the expenses were pretty flat, right on $1,748, different from budget on the expense side. So those are really good results from a budgetary point of view. You spent all your money and you collected a little more than you anticipated. Can't ask for anything more than that. You spent $483,000 on capital assets, mainly for infrastructure, and the business type spent $1.7 million, mostly on the electric plant and some water main activity. And again, you had no new debt for this year, so you just made payments on the principal. On page 15, I highlighted in the middle just the pension liability, the OPEB liability, and the deferred inflows and outflows that are associated with those. And that's really the only thing new that's in the financials right now. And these have been the hot topics the last couple of years, the pension funding and the OPEB funding. So your pension liability is $8.3 million, and your OPEB liability is just a little over $5 million. You've got 179 or almost 180,000 set aside at the end of June last year for OPEB benefits, and you're starting to put a little small amount of money away each year for that. Most communities that we see today are funding OPEB in some fashion, some more than others, but for the most part, I'd say like maybe 60% of the folks, so maybe even higher than that, maybe 75% of the folks are starting to put some money aside for it. And you'd be surprised how quickly those monies accumulate. You can invest it in a little more aggressive areas than you can on general fund money, and it won't take long to knock that $5 million liability down if you stay at it. So on page 18 is the governmental funds balance sheet. It shows your general fund balance of $2.5 million, and that's a little over 15% of general fund expenditures. The rating agencies, I think I've mentioned this in the past, are looking for that ratio to be somewhere between 7 or 8% and 15%. You're at the high end of that range. And within those funds, you have a stabilization fund of $1,231,000 and a capital stabilization fund of about $150,000. So you've got some pretty healthy reserves set aside. especially compared to what you had, years ago where there weren't any. So you ought to be proud of that. And then on the next page, on page 20, the results of the general fund, it shows a negative change in fund balance of $169,000. For the most part, that was transfers out to fund capital articles, to capital project funds, and basically the rest of it is break even. And that's really what you want your general fund to come in at anyway. You want to spend all your money that you've appropriated and collect what you hope to get. Page 25 shows your other post-employment trust fund, and that is $179,603. The importance of funding that at some level allows you to get a better discount rate from the GASB, and those rates vary anywhere from like 4 to 8%. So if you've got a discount rate because of your funding at like 7%, the liability is going to be about half of what it would be if you weren't funding anything. So the fact that you've got a commitment to start funding the OPEB, it increases your discount rate, lowers your liability. So there's definitely benefits to doing that, aside from the fact that you're reducing the liability. And again, on page 54, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages of notes just on OPEB. And
Right.
there's a little extra information there because of the fact that the lake plant is still on GASB 45. That'll go away next year. But there's a lot of information in there. I'm not going to go through it all, but it's all, I'm hoping that the GASB is going to pare this down a little bit, because you've got multiple charts in here with actuarial assumptions and things like that. And in my opinion, it could just say that the actuarial assumptions could be found in the town's valuation report, and refer people to a link on the website where they could look at that, rather than having all this stuff in there. But we're not there yet. It probably won't be for a couple of years, but that's where hopefully these disclosures get condensed down a little bit. And then on page 65 is your general fund schedule of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. I already talked about the results of the budget, but this is a required schedule that you'll see that presents the original budget, the final budget, and the actual budgetary comparison, and the amounts carried over to the next year. And then the last thing in this report is we give another opinion on your internal control over financial reporting. And this is not, it doesn't really jump right out at you and tell you what we're trying to say here, but
What page?
again, the wording is all driven by the standard. But it says in the next to the last paragraph on 81,
81.
our audit did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we consider to be material weaknesses. That's what we say in that report. So it just says that we didn't find anything wrong with your report. So
Okay.
that's the best that we can say there too. So those are the financials. I'll answer any questions anybody might have on these, or?
I had two things that I wanted to speak to. One has to do just with the management letter. I was on the finance board a long time ago when we had missing money, and I think that was probably around the time when we started having annual audits, because the state came in and told us that we had to have them. And even going back, like just a couple of years ago, the management letters were several pages long. And this year, when I picked up the management letter and read it, I was like, oh, where's the rest of the pages? They're not there. And I think I'd like to just openly commend Denise Demkowski for a phenomenal job in turning around the financial management in this town, because I personally, I've been on the finance board before this board 3 or 4 years, and I was on the finance board before that over 10 years. I have never seen a management letter this short, this brief, without these kind of material weaknesses before, and I think that is a huge step for this town, and the taxpayers should understand how very well managed the finances are right now in the town. And that's hard to come by in such a small staff that we have here. So I wanted to say that. And the other thing that I just keep trying to wrap my head around are these liabilities a little bit. And the one that you spoke about it briefly, and they talk about again on page 50, the pension liability. That figure of $8 million is rather frightening. And is that based on what we would have to potentially pay towards
So you have
our
to-
percentage share of that?
Yes.
Okay,
That is your percentage share of the Essex County Retirement Fund that you participated in.
right, now, is that a cumulative number, that 8 million? I mean, it's obviously not a yearly fee, right?
Oh, no, that's what you would, if that's the present value of the future benefits that you have to pay out.
Okay.
On those liabilities.
So if everyone was to cash out tomorrow, if all the people were to retire out tomorrow, basically, right?
If they got an annuity.
Yeah,
yes,
right.
That's what it would cost you to buy
Right.
the annuities for everybody.
Right.
So my question on that issue is that, is there any particular year or place where you see there might be an escalation that we're not aware of, that we wouldn't be properly prepared for? Because this is part of our annual budget, right? What we pay for the pension.
Right, we do the pay as you need it every year.
Exactly. So, so far, we've been able to keep up with it, and we are able to balance our budget and pay it. And I'm just wondering, when you do this kind of a calculation, are you trying to forewarn us that there's going to be a year that we might not be able to fit it into our operating budget, or is this just a standard reporting thing?
So, to answer your question, the calculations are done by the actuarial firm that takes care of the Essex retirement system as a
Okay.
whole. And the funding mechanism is a requirement, state law requires you to fund that by 2040. And the funding schedule that you'll see is very, it's almost like taking that $8 million and dividing it by the 21 years that are left on the funding schedule. So it will not, it's not anticipated that number will go up much from year to year.
Okay, so we should be able to keep up with this particular thing, and then we're putting aside for the other benefits liability. We're already putting aside
Yes.
towards that.
And there's no mandatory funding requirement on the other post-employment benefits, the OPEB.
Correct.
Just on the pension.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just two questions, I can do it in one.
Okay?
But the pension liabilities was like eight some odd million.
One's 8, one's 5. Yeah.
8.3.
What, under both, under the OPEB and the pension liabilities, how do we compare to other towns in the district? Are we right about the same as the others? And wasn't that, I know it's 2040 now, wasn't that increased a couple of years back?
Yes, it was 2028 before that.
Right, and then it went, so there's a chance that it could go beyond 2040.
Most
Yeah.
likely. Most likely.
But anyway, how do we compare to the other
So
towns in both
You're
of
in
them?
Essex County retirement, so you don't have your own plan, so, and Essex is, I forget what they're funding, but I think, Kyle, you might know, right, you do that audit? Yeah. They're probably in the 65 to 70% funding. There are some communities that are, the lowest one that I see is 27% funded on pension plan, and that is the city of Springfield in Massachusetts. The lowest funded plan in the nation is the city of Providence, Rhode Island. It's about 25% funded. And then the highest one that I see is about maybe 80% or around 85%, and that's Amesbury. Amesbury has a very aggressive investment, not aggressive, but they really pay attention to that. They have their own plan, and they've funded it. And they're one of the best funded plans in the state. Most everybody else is around 60 to 70%, right around there. Even Wellesley, who was 100% funded years ago, is back down to about 68% funded, just because of the changes in mortality and the market crash, the market going down back in 2008 and 2009. they've never really recovered from that. But I would say, so in Massachusetts, the pension, Chapter 32 dictates what the pension benefits are and who participates in it and how much they have to contribute. So it's all controlled by legislation. OPEB is, each community can decide whether it wants to pre-fund that liability or just pay the benefits as they come due. And like I said earlier, about 50 to 60% of the communities that we deal with are starting to fund it voluntarily, some more aggressive than others. So your $180,000 that you have in there today, it's more now, I'm sure. But that's a little on the low side for the communities that are funding. But keep in mind, there's still a lot of other communities that are doing nothing. So the fact that you've started doing that and you're getting it on the books and starting to put the money aside is a positive.
I think we just started that 3 years ago, didn't we?
Yeah.
2 years.
2, 3 years ago.
So we're not as bad as like Central Falls, Rhode Island.
Oh, no. No. I mean, the one good thing about Massachusetts is, especially on the pension side, is you have to make that payment. That's, it's a required payment. And in other states, it's not. They have, in other states, the pension is much like the OPEB. It's whether you make the payment or not. I mean, you have to make the annual required contribution. But anything over and above that is up to the community. And even in some other states, it's not required that they fully fund the annual required contribution. So like, there's schedules in the back that show, I won't go to them, but they show what the annual required contribution is and what the actual contribution was, and they're always, in Massachusetts, they're always the same. But in other states, that table is there to show whether or not they made their full annual required contribution. And many states are not. So, I mean, California, I mean, there's a lot of Detroit. You know who's better off than a lot of states for pensions is Detroit. Detroit, through all their financial problems, they went bankrupt, but their pension funding never went down. They maintained the pension. Everything else went south.
Bill, do you want anything?
So, yeah, I'd say you're all in, every community is pretty much in the same boat as far as the rules go.
No, I'm very pleased with where we are today from where we've come. I think it's, again, I have to echo Selectman Castellanos's viewpoint that I think it's a great testament to the skill, determination, and work ethic of Denise to push this far along.
Yeah, I agree.
Is really is quite an accomplishment. I know the first report I got with the number of, material deficiencies and weaknesses, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So to see them see them all gone is really just a great testament to the great professional I think we have here in town. And I hope she decides to stay with us for another 70 or 80 years until
Easily.
at least way past my time, so I don't have to worry about this anymore.
Mike, you got anything?
Just the same thing that Kathy and Bill said. I mean, it's a testament to not only Denise, but Ellen and everyone in Town Hall and this board making sure that the budget is balanced and that we're funding the appropriate items each year, which isn't easy, given, projects that come up and the funds that we have to work with, but it's really, yeah, it's really quite amazing that we're able to get this good of a report on our audits, which were not very good 3, 4, 5 years ago. So this is a good showing for the town.
It's great for us. I mean, it's, the hardest thing I have to do is write a material weakness comment, believe me. It takes a lot of effort to sit down and do that. And it's not something we like to do. So I'm glad, I'm most happy. And this is probably the most happiest person in this room that these things are gone.
Good. I just had, you did have 2 recommendations. One was to develop and implement a fraud risk assessment, and the second was to have each department document its internal procedures. The document should be written in sufficient detail so that a person unfamiliar with the department's operations could complete the day-to-day critical tasks. And I liked those recommendations. I have to admit, the first one, if I'm understanding it properly, would be more of an internal type of thing that we would do. So probably it would be more work for Denise. I'm not going to look at her. But they would do like an internal assessment of situations where perhaps money isn't turned in on a daily basis, situations where money is collected and there's not a daily reconciliation of what's going on, that kind of thing. Is that kind of
May I answer
the
that?
gist of it?
So
Yeah.
what we recommend is that each department head identify the areas in their department where there's where any misappropriation of assets could occur. And let's not even call it fraud. Let's just talk about things like, and these are instances of fraud, but people don't look at them that way. But padding the payroll, putting in for overtime hours that you didn't work, putting on regular time that you didn't work,
Okay.
misappropriating small amounts of money. So we ask each department head to identify those areas, put it in writing what they're doing to mitigate the chances of somebody misappropriating funds, and then reporting back to management on an annual basis, or even more frequently, what they're doing to monitor those procedures. And to come back and say that, you know, we didn't find any errors in our department, or I signed off on all of the payroll requests that came through my office and they all look appropriate. I didn't see anything that I, you know, had to change or disagreed with or took exception to. So that's the kind of recommendation that we make. There are firms that will do that for you. You can hire somebody to do it for you if you wanted to. And there's a couple of them out there and they do a pretty good job, and they probably charge you $10,000, $12,000 to do that. So you may want to make a decision to pay somebody, or you may want to do it yourself. But I'd like to see the department heads do it, because they're
Okay.
closest to the situation. They would understand that better than anybody. Even paid consultants that come in,
Right.
They might miss something, or they might not get told the truth from somebody.
Okay, so department heads could identify areas where hours can vary and what they do to double check that the hours are correct.
Yep.
Money is collected and it's kept secure, things like, so that sounds manageable. And that kind of goes in line with the departments maybe doing the internal procedures too, so that, you know, if something happens within the department that somebody is out for some period of time, we at least have some idea of what's supposed to be done that's critical. You mean critical, right? We don't want every minute of their day documented. We want the high priority
You wanna make
critical
sure you can
tasks.
Pay your bills, pay your
Right.
payroll,
Okay.
post a budget,
Right.
things like that.
I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but maybe when we have our discussion time, I mean, I feel these are manageable recommendations that we should address.
Well, I think everyone said, I agree. When I first got on this board, I know that we had a lot of differences. You guys sat before us when I was here, and every year it seemed to get better and better and better, and I think we're there. I think we've done the work. I think Denise and the town employees have done the work, and I think we're all in good shape. We're heading down a good road. We got the OPEB money being put aside, and, you know, maybe we can look at putting more in, but I think that's what we can afford comfortably and not overkill it, but I think we're still meeting meeting what we need to meet.
I agree.
So, thank you for your work and coming in.
Okay, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Okay,
Kyle, I'll see you in a few weeks, right?
Yep.
Beginning of July?
starting all over again.
Is that here already?
Seriously?
Beginning of July.
He does the work and you present it.
He does such a nice job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's
for
nice to
coming in.
meet you, thank you.
Okay, so moving on with the agenda, we're now going to talk about the fire chief hiring process.
Yes.
If I may.
Sure.
So after the last meeting, I reached out and have several local fire chiefs that are willing to participate in a screening committee, albeit depending on schedule. Some of them are traveling in the month of June, are not available, but Chief Fred Mitchell from Georgetown is available, Chief Mike Dwyer from West Newbury, Chief Larry Fisher from Merrimack, and Chief Ronald Giovanacci. He's retired from Topsfield, and he's the current executive director of the Essex County Fire Chiefs Association. All four of them said they would be more than happy to participate in our process.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. We open it to discussion.
In conjunction with you, Sam, and Jeff? Or just the fire chiefs?
It's, I guess, up to the, I would say, at a minimum, I should be involved, because I would spearhead the communications with the candidates and facilitate the questions and things like that. I would, I mean, I'm fine without Sam, but I do really think the police chief should be involved, since
I agree.
we've had years of not the best working relationship between police and fire, and I do think it's important to have
I agree
someone from
that,
the police department.
that Jeff, who runs a major department in town and does an outstanding job doing that, both operations and hiring, would be a critical asset to that role and communicating that against applicants. I value his opinion as well as Sam's opinion on interviewing people and his background on fire, regulations and stuff that has to do in town. So it would be my opinion that the three of you, plus any of the former fire chiefs that want to help us with that, would be part of that kind of committee.
Yeah, I concur. Those first responders, the chemistry needs to be there. They need to act as one as much as possible, because I think lives depend on it in certain situations. So to have a good working relationship right from the get-go between the fire and the chief and the police would be, I think, amenable to the entire community.
Well, again, I'll state what I mentioned at the last meeting, that I just don't see what the building inspector and the police chief know about running a fire department. And I've seen a lot of committees over the years to form either hire a fire chief or a police chief, and none of them that I've ever seen have included the other public safety department head, and I've never seen any, including the building inspector. So I know that the fire department doesn't work directly with the building inspector, and they may call the building inspector if they have a problem, but it would be probably more so dealing with, like, the electric company than with the building inspector. If they need to shut off power to a dwelling or a business. And I just think that it should be maybe the personnel director and the committee of the other fire chiefs would give a better perspective than the police department and the building inspector.
Okay, Kathy?
Hi, thank you. I think that the situation we're in is very new for our town. We've had incredible difficulties in the area of the fire department since the passage of the strong fire chief law. And we now I think we've come to understand it better and how it functions, and now we're prepared to try and strengthen the department and get the leadership in there that hasn't been there yet. So the report, the report that we paid for suggested that we get some outside parties involved, and I 100% believe in that. But we need the police chief involved at the least, just because of the fact that they share the same dispatch. Some towns don't have that. The fire department has their own dispatch. We're joined, those two safety departments, by that dispatch, and so they have to have a really good working relationship because of that, and because they're on the scenes together, but especially because of that dispatch component, I believe. I do want Denise involved because she is our personnel director, and quite frankly, she's done very well for us so far, selecting people that have fit in well here and are working well with the boards and committees they need to interact with. That being said, I'd like to keep it sort of balanced between the outside and the inside people, just because of I don't want the appearance that we've weighted the committee towards the inside people versus the outside people. If it could be more balanced with just 2 inside people and maybe 2 of the fire chiefs, I think that would work. But I'm I'm looking for a consensus here amongst all of us. I feel like we should all be able to agree on that. I feel that, having a couple of fire chiefs in there will give us the kind of input that we need, and that when they make the selection, why she voted the way she did when they bring forward candidates, and then the fire chiefs will be able to explain to us what they saw and why they voted the way they did to bring forward candidates. So we'll have all the information we need, I think, if we do it that way.
Denise, so how many candidates do we have right now?
12.
12. So, that being said, you as the personnel director, and like you just talked about these fire chiefs, make a lot of sense, because I don't know anything about the fire business, and at this point in time, to involve our current fire department, I don't think that picture should be there yet. I think it's once we get it narrowed down, we maybe can bring that layer in. I definitely agree with the police chief, because I know, me sitting on this board, I have been involved in situations when too many firemen go on a call, and people don't like it, and the police are there first, and what have you. They do work hand in hand. I mean, our first responders are our police department. They're first on scene. So I think they definitely should be working hand in hand. I know I've been in meetings before where the police and the fire weren't working together. So I definitely think we definitely need to add that layer in at one point. I don't know where it is, but I definitely think we should have that layer in there. And then toward the end of it, I definitely think that our building inspector does. He does get involved in a lot of our fire codes and what have you. So I definitely think that, I don't think it needs to be out front, but I definitely think we need to have that involved as well. So, I mean, we can, if someone wants to make a motion, or they, what they think they want to put in there, but that's just my opinion of it. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think we're all pretty much, majority of us agree that the police chief and some level of Sam, I don't understand doing multiple interviews when you can have Sam and Jeff, and whatever the schedule is for the fire chiefs that are going to help us. I mean, that's really going to depend on them. So limiting that to one or two really just kind of hinders the processing of it. So I think just leaving it open to all the people that are going to help us for the fire chief's perspective, Sam and definitely Jeff, and Denise being part of that process from the beginning, and then whittle those 12 candidates down to 3 or 4 to bring before us to answer any other kind of questions we may have. Again, I'm no fire expert like you, right? But I do want to be able to talk to people and see how they interact with different departments and different groups of people. Interacting with us especially is important. So, I talk for a living, so I think I could do that. I think limiting it on the onset is a bad move, but that's my opinion.
But even to Mike's point, would be if we were to narrow it down to only 2, like maybe someone can't make it, one of the chiefs
Right.
can't make it, whatever, maybe more would be better, a couple, at least, whatever wants to volunteer, they're gonna
Right.
volunteer, why not?
I'm hearing what he's saying. If I'm understanding, I think it sounds all right. So what you're suggesting, Mike, is that we just take all 4 of the fire chiefs, hoping they can make it to all the interviews, but then we may not have the...
I'm banking on they can't make it to all the interviews.
But then we wouldn't have the consistency in each interview. I don't know, is that all right? Go for it.
So if I may, my plan was to move forward with all 4 of the chiefs that were
Oh.
available, depending on their schedule. So I will tell you, Chief Dwyer from West Newbury is unable to participate the entire month of June. So if it's something you want us to get going on right away, he would not be able to participate.
Right.
And one of the other chiefs has a vacation in the middle of June.
Right.
But that being said, I don't think, I envision the process of, and what I've relayed to the chiefs is, I envision us meeting one night, going through all the resumes, deciding who we would feel is worthy of an interview, because some of them actually don't have any qualifications but still apply. At that same meeting, we would develop questions and a list of qualifications that we would ask them for during the interviews. I think 1 or 2 nights of interviewing and then a discussion at the end narrowing it down to candidates. I don't think it will be a long process for the screening committee, just because we don't have 20 and 30 candidates. I think, like I said, of the 12, maybe we'll interview 8, and then narrow that down to 3 or 4. So I don't think it's a huge time commitment, and they all are very willing to help us, again, around their schedules. And there's
Right.
2 of them that are unavailable for some part of the time, but my plan is to utilize all 4 of them if we can.
But
Good.
the point is, even like I just said, I don't know anything about the fire business or the fire chiefs. No more do I mean, I do hire personnel in my company, but that's your job. I mean, and you've brought a lot of good hires in the town, you've brought a lot of good people before us. I don't have a problem that, the only thing I do ask, at one point, once we get it to a certain point, I think that maybe, we'll figure it out, we don't have to talk about this all night, but we should at least, from our captains, or maybe our department somehow, but I know that can get sticky, I get it, you know what I mean? I mean, the more people we add into, the more confusing it's gonna get, I get all that, you know what I mean?
Well, and my only feeling with the staff is it gets political at that point.
Right.
Because there are members of the fire department that are calling board members, and I know that, because they come in and tell me, and I've heard from board members. I just think then it gets too close and too political, and we're trying to keep that out of it. To Ed's point, we're trying to make it impartial, to get the board involved in the fire staff, then you're starting to get friends of friends, or this one likes this one. I just think it gets, you know, maybe you want to have the captains come here when you have the public interview and allow them to participate or hear the
Sure,
interviews.
that's all, yeah.
But I think getting them too involved with the department during that process can be,
Well, I
to a
definitely think you gotta get it narrowed down, I
I-
agree.
Bill?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, you were just looking the other way. I just
I
wanted
was
to know
going
I
to
have a
say,
comment.
I just feel like the screening and then the interview, if you have 4 fire chiefs and then these 3 people from our town interviewing, I don't feel that they need to have any other interviews except with us, honestly. And I think it's hard enough to come in the public forum on television to do interviews, to introduce the idea that, you know, fire personnel from the audience might be popping out with questions during that, I think is unfair of us, you know?
You know, Bill, I like the idea of bringing 3 or 4 before the Board of Selectmen for a final interview, but I don't know why you need to bring the members of the fire department on board. And just looking back, we didn't bring the members of the highway department on board when we interviewed the highway superintendent. We didn't bring members of the police department on board when we interviewed for the police chief. I don't know why we would have to bring on members of the fire department to participate. They certainly could be here, but it's an open meeting, but I don't know why they have to be involved in the process.
I would say if you were to, or we were to allow anything, it would be to have them submit questions to Denise to address their concerns. And then that would be it. I mean, maybe we ask those in a live interview type thing, but I think, like Denise said, yeah, I think like Denise said, to have personnel and other people ask questions during a live interview is
I
not
don't
fair to the
think I wanted
candidates.
ask questions. I was thinking more of what they were looking for. The captains of each department needed what they're looking for. I don't mean they have to go talk to the candidate, you know what I mean? I guess I'm saying it all wrong, but, what they were thinking, but, I mean, that's fine. I mean, simple is better. I mean, you know what you're doing, the chiefs know what they're doing. I'm good with that. The police department, I'm good with that. I mean, I don't have a problem. Go ahead, Bill.
I think Denise has the process nailed. It streamlines it. She's got professionals in it. It sounds the way you described it, exactly the way I would like to see it attacked. Go through resumes initially. You're going to disqualify a number of candidates right off the bat. Then you're going to discuss kind of questions you would ask those candidates, pare it down from there. And from that, we're going to be left with, I think, 3 or 4 solid candidates that passed the sniff test by the ex-chiefs, who should know what they're doing. Hopefully have built some kind of chemistry with Chief Gillen and Mr. Jocelyn, as well as yourself. And then I think, based on past performance, I think we're going to have a really strong candidate in front of us in no time at all.
hopefully that's the plan.
So do we need to vote on this tonight, the process?
I mean, you can vote to just form the screening committee if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay.
So can I make a motion
Go for
that we form a screening committee based on Denise's recommendations of her, the chief,
Chiefs.
the 4 chiefs,
Sounds
the police chief and the building inspector to form Screening committee.
I get a second?
I'll
Second.
second it.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so moving on with the agenda, we have votes of the board. We have the minutes from the April 1st, 2019 meeting.
Yeah, they look to be in order. Mr. Chairman, I'll move for passage.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'm sorry.
All in favor?
Those aren't being voted on.
Meeting, minutes from the April 8th, 2019 meeting.
I'm abstaining, by the way.
I'm
from-
sorry.
Sorry.
I just missed the vote. Kathy had asked a question. Who made the
I
motion
interrupted.
on the last one?
Who made-
Selectman Watson made the motion, I second.
Thank you,
And I'm
It was 4-0.
abstaining because I wasn't here.
thank you.
Sorry about
Okay,
that, guys.
so moving on, are we good?
Yes.
Minutes from the April 8th, 2019 meeting?
Yeah, those look to be in order, and they're pretty close. I'll move for passage.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Yep.
Abstaining.
Minutes from the April 16th, 2019 meeting?
Again, those look to be in order. Move for passage.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Abstain.
Minutes from the April 29th, 2019 meeting?
Yeah, that was a meeting just before the town meeting. They look to be in order, and I'll move for passage.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Abstain.
To authorize and sign $181,685 general obligation bond, anticipation note for the FY19 capital plan, radios of the highway and police cruisers, fire and EMS vehicles, and fire radio system.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Yep.
Okay, moving on.
So I'm going to start this. This is all the paperwork you need to sign. The tabs on the left, please, as you're going.
So can I keep moving
Yep.
down?
Do we have to do it in a particular order?
Normally, the chair and vice chair on the top, and then everyone else.
Okay, so I'll go third line.
Okay, we'll start at the other end. Mike, old business, old or unfinished business?
Selectmen's time.
Whoop, wait a minute. Did I skip over something? Whoop, I didn't see it. Selectmen's time.
Nope,
I'm
nothing.
with it, but I'll sign this.
Bill?
Hmm?
You have to sign.
Yeah.
Did you sign them all?
Oh, no, I didn't sign them all. Sorry, there's a bunch, huh?
There's a whole bunch.
All right, I'll do it
Time
one
and
at a time. Here you go.
reports.
No. Nothing on
Yes,
this.
I'll
Why
use
is
this
this
time.
Just one of the tabs. I have
Jesus.
tabs with.
I want to just give a shout out and a great appreciation to the girls, Nantucket girls soccer team they were down at the Pines along the river 2 weeks ago, cleaning up along the riverside. I thought I saw
Killing me.
at least a truckload. I can't even tell you how many bags, but I want to just thank them for their community service. It was a great effort by all those girls. Flag, who do we have to see about getting a flag at the Pines? We have a flag pole.
There's usually one down there, no?
There used to be one down there, but it's not there. I don't know if it was taken down for the winter and not put back. We
No,
have a
'cause it was
flag
up all
pole in
winter.
between the two fields. If we
Yeah, I
get-
have flags.
If we get that back put
There-
up, that would be great.
There was one there a couple of years ago, because someone called me to go down and fix it.
Yeah, there's always been one there, so
Yeah.
someone must have taken it.
Who would take the
A
flag?
lot of signing.
No idea. I know it was senior day for
Holy
the
crap.
varsity
have
high
these
school, and they
on
were all
month
looking
and
out at the
then
street at the
spots.
flags hanging on the,
Yeah.
on the telephone poles because they were looking around for a flag.
Man, if someone took that flag, that's,
Wait a minute, I'll give them to Ellen.
But that's fine. I can, the police are really good about putting the flags up, so I'll get them a flag tomorrow and ask them to put it up there.
Okay. Is there any estimation on, have we heard anything about the stalls? I know since they put up the signs now, it's even, it's like a moth to a flame now. People just,
It's still the same thing. When you see the partitions outside the doors, then you'll know they're ready to be open.
the partitions outside.
That's what we're waiting on, is the partition, so that the doors stay open during the day, because it's an outdoor bathroom, and there'll be a partition, so you walk in around the partition into the respective,
Those kind of
Yep.
partitions.
So.
Not the partitions
Not inside, outside.
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 nope.
So, I don't know if we can talk more about that or not, but if we have to put it on for another agenda item. But I know we were having discussion on who is going to basically open and close and all that. Can we talk about it? We need to talk about it at a later date on another agenda item.
You're the chairman.
Oh. Well, I'll sign this in a minute. So what I basically did is I had talked to the police chief, I talked to the highway supervisor, and basically, I think it was actually the police chief that actually came up with this one. He was saying our janitor on the way in the morning could open them, and if it was up to the board, if it cost us extra money, or if it takes them 5 minutes to open, however we do it. And he was saying what he would do is have his men close them at midnight and go in with a flashlight to look around and make sure no one's on the interior. Or he said 9 o'clock, whatever it is, whatever the hours are, whatever we decide. Because for security reasons, God forbid there's someone in there, they're trying to close them, God forbid there's needles on the floor, or what have you. He's like, I'll have my men go in at night and close it up. I don't have a problem with that. So, I don't know if the board likes that idea, but
So who's gonna open them on the weekends? Because our facilities he only works Monday through Friday.
okay. So, we got Monday through Friday covered. So,
Can I just say, I think this is a more than old business. This is a new item, and I would think that we should look into it, because honestly, I can't see leaving those bathrooms open unmonitored till midnight and hoping.
I said
an
9 or midnight.
Or
I didn't say
9, whatever. The only time they should be open probably is when there's a game in place and there's someone to check on them. Otherwise, we're going to have trouble. But again, I think this is a much bigger issue than old business. I think we should push it forward to another agenda.
What does the board think about that? You want to push it to another agenda?
I want an agenda item to discuss that.
I can put it on June 10th.
Lovely. We discussed poop in the river tonight. It's right and coming with our theme.
Is it back to me still?
Nope. I'm just signing right now.
There's, yeah.
Yes, I think he was still on Selectmen's time.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Shoot,
And
No, I don't
reports,
need it.
right?
This is my stuff.
So we
Yes.
did have I believe we had one meeting of the high school building committee after our last selectmen meeting, where we basically, I wrote down these things and I forgot to take it. We have a better timeline of how that project will go. Moving backward from the fall of 2022, when the doors would open, the ground will break. I'm just doing this in memory, Denise, so, because I forgot that notebook. But I believe the ground will be broken in spring of next year, 2020.
Yes, well, we're doing the remaining design work through like the fall. And then they are gonna start with the expenses by the fall. They're gonna start buying the materials and things like that ahead of time.
Right, the contractor will be picked,
Yep.
chosen, their bid will be matched against the design.
Yep.
Any discrepancies will be ironed out, so that it's one price. At that point, again, all goes well, ground will be broken spring of 2020. The building will take approximately 24 months to complete, and then the demolition of the two existing buildings will phase. The high school will be first, middle school will be second. High school first, because that'll alleviate a lot of the traffic flow congestion, which is going to be an issue during construction. So necessary to take that building down first to really alleviate that congestion right away. And then it'll be the middle school building that will be taken down. That's pretty much where we left off with that committee
Yes.
meeting. We will continue to meet the second Thursday of every month, Tuesday. I wish it was Thursday sometimes. For as long as, until the doors are open. So I look forward to staying on that project with Denise and seeing that through. I think it's exciting, and glad to be part of it. And that'll wrap up my time and reports. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything, Ed?
And just one thing, just to expand upon what Bill had just said, I've had a couple people ask questions about when the tax increase for the schools go into effect.
The estimate right now is the January 1st, 2021 tax bill. If we start borrowing funds, which I met with the other two towns and the school business manager to start talking about a financing plan. The three towns, are recommending they phase in the borrowing. Probably a third is needed up front to cover the construction costs. The way bonding works is you borrow, so if we borrow in September of this year, actually, I think we're gonna try and plan it for July. July of this year, the payment will be due next fiscal year, which means it will hit the tax bill for the following January. We believe it will be incrementally over 3 fiscal years that we'll be borrowing the money, so for the first 3 years, it'll be incrementally added to the tax bills, and then most likely in year 4, once the increase is on, it'll be the entirety of the borrowing will be on there. So, January 2021, and then over the next few years, it'll incrementally add on, is the plan right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm all set.
I have a
Kathy?
question on that same topic. So this is debt exclusion, so it is allocated on just a per pupil basis?
There's still a formula, yes.
Okay, the per pupil formula though,
Yes.
correct? So we had a capital assessment on the middle school, and I asked the finance director for Pentucket why West Newbury didn't have it. We had it and Merrimack did, and he said because West Newbury paid it up front. So I just wanted to make sure that all 3 towns are treating this the same way so that it's fair because it's a per pupil allocation. And I wouldn't want that to get skewed.
Well, but even with the capital, it doesn't. So the capital, we were all assessed a dollar amount. West Newbury chose to pay it down instead of, so we have our Bagnell debt, we have the field portion. They paid their field portion up front. So it did not change our apportionment that we pay on an annual basis. So should another community choose to pay theirs down, I don't see that they could because it's excluded and
Right.
it has to go on the tax bill where
Okay.
the capital debt is not all of it's excluded.
But are we going to still be paying the capital assessment for the middle school as we're tearing it down? Or is it still viable what we paid for?
I believe the only capital assessment on the middle school is the fields that we're
The
currently
fields.
paying for.
And
Everything else, I believe.
And those
is
are
set.
going to stay?
Those are
The
staying.
fields are staying.
The new
Okay,
fields
good.
behind the middle school are not being touched.
Okay.
That's the reason why the new school isn't built on those
Is
fields.
this everything?
Yes.
Would probably be, logistically better, but that was the sacred cow that we couldn't touch.
Yes.
Okay, so,
Discussions began.
And just so you're aware, the school business office is remaining at the middle school. They are going to cut the building and leave where the business office is now is going to remain, and they're going to demolish the rest of the middle school. So a portion of that building and the heating and the infrastructure is still remaining. So if there were anything left on the heating system or vents or anything like that,
okay.
it would still be attributed to that portion of the building. But I think that's all we're paying currently is the fields.
Very small.
And then we're paying the Bagnell debt, which is under our capital assessment as well.
so,
All right, you having a select?
well, I'm just trying to figure, so this is, I apologize for this, I just get a little confused. This is your selectmen time and reports, and then you have all unfinished business, and then other items. So I felt like we did old business already a few minutes ago, right? Sort of we did with selectmen's time, right?
I don't think we got the selectmen time. I think we're on old business for
So
We
we're on old-
Selectmen's time. We haven't gotten to
Well,
old
Selectmen's
business.
No,
Times
we're on
and
selectmen's time and
reports.
reports,
Right, so the selectmen's time and reports is supposed to be, if any board member is participating in a committee or goes to a meeting, they're supposed to report back. And if there's agenda items or things they'd like to see on an upcoming meeting, that's when it's discussed.
Okay, so this is when we set our agenda items for the next meeting. That's what I was trying to get to.
Yes, that's
Okay,
selectmen's time.
so, yes, I had a couple of items that I wanted to ask about for the next meeting. The first being that, I don't know if you realize this, but typically minutes are accepted at the beginning of an agenda to make sure that we stay on track and that we pay attention to what we voted on the last meeting. So if the board were amenable to that, I'd like to see the minutes moved up to the front of the agenda. It's just the proper order for that item. If it is, it's not my idea, it's the way it's supposed to be. And then the other thought that I had is I prefer our visitors to come in and sit down so that we can have a discussion with them and not to have to stand way over there at a podium. I just feel like the podium is a little outdated and that it's more of a meeting that's more productive if they can sit down and we can look at the pages they're looking at the same time. Hopefully someday we'll be able to have it projected up there for the viewing public, but I would prefer to have the table always here. And then it's our choice whether or not to have audience participation. When I was on the school committee, we often didn't invite the public to comment on a presentation because we were still in the midst of reviewing it and it wasn't appropriate. But I don't know how the board feels about those changes. So that's
Well,
a future agenda item if you want, or I'm not sure how to bring that about.
Does anyone want to talk about it? I mean, the only thing I will say is when we have anyone important come in, we always have them sit at a table in front of us usually. As far as the public coming in, I know before the reason the podium was put there is because the public would come in and it would get out of control, it would get unruly, so that's why we put the podium, but maybe if the board's up for having the table in front of us, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, if people have paperwork, obviously that's a good place for them to sit, but I know when the MRI people came in for the fire report, they sat there. We usually have anyone big like that, or governor, or senator, or whatever, they would come in and sit. I don't know, I mean, I don't have a problem which way it goes, as long as it stays orderly and,
It doesn't matter to me. The podium seems to have worked out fine when you have just comments. You might have two or three people that are giving their ideas or comments, and they just keep switching back. Sometimes it might get crowded at the table, but it doesn't really matter to me.
Well, I was suggesting that the table would be for a person who's on our agenda. So whether they be a person from town who wants to talk to us, like Mike Dempsey, or whatever, and then you'd have the extra place then for someone from the audience if the chairman decided to open it up. But the proper procedure is to determine when we're meeting whether or not we're going to open it up for audience questions. I mean, typically you can, but you don't have to on every item.
I think it's up to the chair to determine who can talk and who can't talk at any meeting. And then as far as the table, the podium, I don't care. The podium has worked for years. It's the table, you can work the table. I don't think it matters. If I was speaking, I would rather work at the podium, but
I don't know if I really have a preference, podium or table. 6 of one, half dozen of another.
so why don't, if it's all right, why don't we just leave it up to, if we have someone important coming in, we'll have them sit at the table, or is that good with everybody?
Yeah,
If like
sure.
tonight, we had this gentleman come in, and I knew he was coming in, and,
And they've always, when they've done the presentation before, they've always sat
yeah,
up
and
there.
I talked to Denise early and said, I think that we need to have a table for him, and we talked about it, and it was there, so.
But other than that, the podium seems to work out okay.
Okay, so either one, we'll either have the table or the podium, so depending on who's on the agenda, we can, if it's okay with everyone, I think it would work either way.
That sounds good. So on the next agenda, do you ever determine, like, for the year, it sounds like we have a lot of projects already in process, so maybe our goals are already set for the year, but did we want to make sure that we had discussed if there were any goals for this board for the year?
Yeah, I definitely would, but number one, what's on our next agenda?
Right now, I don't have much. Rennie is coming in to discuss, I just closed it, sorry. Rennie is coming in to discuss highway department matters. And the police chief has asked, I don't know if you recall, Bill was on the board, maybe Ed and Mike, I'm not sure, years and years ago. It actually may have still been the three-member board. We had some complaints on Route 113 and the speeding. And I was asked to write a letter to DOT about extending the 25-mile-an-hour zone to Town Hall. I never heard back from anyone. Apparently, it went to other folks here in the town. But it's come up again because there have been complaints going to the police department. So the chief has been speaking with DOT. We have some paperwork. They have no plans to change the speed limit. But he wants to talk to you about possibly changing the signage or increasing signage outside. So that's... and now I just added the Pines bathroom to it, so. So we still have plenty of room on the agenda. I do have a pending list of items that, when we have space, I do put it in, but it's up
So
to you.
I think what Kathy was just saying, does anyone have any items that they want to put on for an agenda item for the season? Or do they have anything they want to see get done on the board this year?
Well, do you want me to add that as an agenda item, goals of fiscal '20 of the
Yeah.
board, so that you have that discussion on the agenda?
For next meeting? I was just trying to see if they wanted to do that.
Well, I think we put it on the agenda, so they have no choice.
Okay.
I have a choice because I won't be here.
What?
You won't be here?
Okay,
So if you have any goals, you can send them to me
I
ahead of
have
time.
0 goals in life.
so I would like to have on the agenda for next meeting to discuss the bathroom, seeing we can't.
Yep.
I definitely like to discuss the bathroom, and I would like to ask the board members if they can just do some thinking about weekends, how they're gonna handle weekends. I mean, I think maybe, it sounds like we might have the week covered, but weekends, we could talk about it.
Makes sense.
Yep, so that's
Okay.
on there, and now the goals of the board is an agenda item.
Okay, so are you all done with selectmen's reports? Kathy, you didn't?
Yep.
Okay,
I'm fine.
The agenda item on the bathroom, is it strictly open and closing, or is it maintenance?
I have cleaning and locking and unlocking is what
Yeah.
the agenda actually identifies right now.
Okay. Got an
Okay.
idea already?
all right, so, selectmen's reports, I know Denise, I missed the meeting, but me and you, when you went to the Merrimack,
The
Valley-
community rowing group,
yeah,
yes. So there actually was not a lot discussed at that meeting because so I've been involved with the group since November, I believe October, November. The group itself has been meeting since last year at this time. All along, we've had different representatives from state agencies. We have legislative, Lenny Mears has been there, Bruce Tarr's office has been there. We were banking on a series of grants that the representatives from both of the state agencies with these grants have been actively participating with the group. Turns out we did not get the first grant, and we don't qualify for the second grant. So it was a very disappointing meeting. We had to come back and regroup. I've been speaking to Mike Dempsey about community preservation funds. Right now, we've been tossing around that Haverhill will pay to design and do the engineering work for the boat shed, and then we would fund it through CPA to build it. There was some question on whether CPA funds would cover that. Mike spoke with the state, I spoke with our council. It appears if we're just building a shed for the boats, it would be covered. So we have to sort of redirect what we've been planning all these months. But right now, that seems to be where we're focused on. I attended a meeting last Thursday at Lawrence City Hall as part of the monthly Merrimack Valley Managers and Mayors group. And the Secretary of Economic Development was there, and we hit him up for the bond bill money. So there is money in the illustrious bond bills, and what the chances would be that it would be released and that the governor would approve it. He is interested in our project. He told us to come back with more specifics. The good news on that is former Senator Kathleen Ives from Haverhill put in a $2 million bond bill, and we're probably talking about a $150,000 project. So we said, well, what's the likelihood if, we only ask for a very small portion of that? So he seemed interested, he seemed like his office could work with us, so we're gonna try that avenue as well. But right now, we're sort of back at square one with where we're gonna go for funding.
So right now, they're basically just paying us rent still to use the facility.
They're not doing anything because we couldn't get the docks in until their program was over, so they didn't
Oh.
use the Pines at all
Oh,
this spring.
okay.
So they will be back in the fall, but yeah, they were not able to row from here this spring.
Okay. All right, so,
In the fall, will that include Pentucket children?
So the plan right now is yes,
I thought that was the plan before, but.
but that was not the plan before, so,
wasn't the plan
that was
before.
never discussed that they were starting in the spring. And I had been at those meetings, and Haverhill had never said like in the middle of a school year. So the plan is for, the two athletic directors to meet as soon as the program is done, and I think it finishes this week, and then start putting in logistics in place. So there are some difficulties, because there's only so many boats, so they need to make sure that there's enough instructors and boats available to accommodate Pentucket. They definitely think it's doable, but obviously Pentucket's gonna have to put something up financially, whether it's a shell or an instructor or something to make the program work. But they are actively willing to try and work and see what they can get done.
Have they thought about reaching out to Harvard, MIT, BU, Northeast?
they have a big group of people.
And saying, can I just get one of your old boats?
So
And then we're gonna give you back some trained rowers in a couple of years, and, kind of a mutual, collaboration?
Yes, so the short answer is yes. And also, one of our committee members, Ellen Mitzner, you met her, she came here, she's the rowing professional. She has contacts that she was reaching out to see what was available. She's the one getting us the specs on the boathouses and how they went through the permitting process. So there are definitely opportunities. We've also discussed that once the program gets in place, to reach out to Whittier and see if it's something that they want to partner into as well and offer it to their students to really have a regional rowing team. But we felt that at this point, we're going to stick with the two communities and see if there's any opportunities for working with some schools and then maybe promising scholarships or getting, kids in line for scholarship opportunities. All that is on the table right now.
How about reaching out to Whittier to construct a building?
We've discussed that as well. We have to go through the design and engineering, so we're not sure what it will entail. We don't think it will entail much. It's a pretty basic building, but there is some engineering that's required because of the proximity to the river. So we want to figure those things out, but that is definitely something we've discussed.
Okay. So, Selectmen's time and report. So I don't really have anything. I mean, I would like to, if possible, I would like to see the personal bylaw conversation carry on that we had going on.
So before I add that on, the Personnel Board would like to know if you need to meet with them to go over any areas of confusion or concern, or if you're ready to make a recommendation on it.
Well, I don't think we're ready, from what I sat on, I don't think we're ready for recommendation. I think we need to iron out a couple more things between us, and then I know there was 14 items that you needed, that fell into your lap as your job, that needed to be taken away and that you handled, that was in there. They were gonna pull them out, right?
I don't know if it was 14,
Well,
but yes,
whatever.
there are some items that
Some
are,
items.
yes,
I'd
that
take the
fall
14
under
away and call
general.
it some items.
Yep, yep.
Okay, and then it was basically overtime, wasn't it? Their vacation time.
Yeah, it's time off.
Right, time off. So can't we have the discussion and then pass that on to them and let them do it?
Yeah,
Let
that's
them-
fine. So you don't need them to come in, you want to have a discussion amongst
Well, if they're willing
yourselves?
to come in, if they want to come in, it might be
Yeah, they should come in.
premature. I mean,
Yeah, well, I don't know if they want to come in unless if you want to engage with them over the policy, or if you're just going to talk amongst
I don't
themselves.
have a problem engaging with them.
Okay, so I'll invite them in.
So for the next meeting, do we have time, is what I'm asking.
I guess it depends how much time you want for that. So I have it on, I'll put it on my list, and then you and I can talk before I reach out to them when you want to put it on there. Because right now, the 3 remaining members have not asked to seek reappointment, because they're waiting to see how it plays out between now and, I guess, June 30th.
So if we sit there and do nothing, they're gonna probably say, forget it.
I don't know, but they are waiting to see what happens with this board to see if they need to re-up their appointment.
Well, I mean, it's only gonna be easier if we have questions and they're sitting in front of us, that's my opinion, I don't know what the board thinks, but if we have questions and we talk about it, I mean, what do you, everyone else think? You wanna try and do it ourselves and then pass it on to them, or?
I'm not.
I would need some
Questions like that.
clarification. What exactly are we discussing, having them in to talk about?
So the board formed or reformed the Personnel Advisory Board that's identified in our personnel bylaws or personnel policy that was non-existent for,
Okay.
to review and make recommendations on the changes to the personnel policy. My complaint over the years is it offers no vacation time for new hires. They have to work here a full year as of July 1st to get any time off, and it's been very difficult to attract employees that want to come here and have no vacation time. So that's been sort of the driving force. They have put together a proposal for the board with a number of changes, one of which is eliminating vacation, sick, and personal time and going to a PTO type accrual. That seems to be the biggest issue that was up for discussion. So I can forward you the last red line version that the board received with their recommended changes.
So this is going to change for all of the non-contractual employees. This is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would like some time to look at that.
So maybe I will forward it to you, and maybe it's not on the next agenda, but the one after?
It's fine with me.
That'll be
I
the
know
night we
the
make
peop-
the appointments, but,
Give it a month?
so maybe we ask them to re-up, if they're willing to continue in
I
their
think they need
appointment.
positive feed that we're gonna carry on with it.
Yep.
And I think that maybe that would make them happy if we can let them know we are looking at it, it's not been put on the back burner.
I think they should know we're committed to updating this handbook to make us attractive to new employees and better able to retain the best we have.
Right.
And I think it's only fair if we allow Selectman Castellalis some time to catch
Sure.
up to speed
Yeah,
on
I
this
don't have a
I don't
problem
know
with
what
that.
it
issue
is.
so that she can speak to it in a much, better position.
So I, want me to put it on the July 8th agenda, the first July meeting?
Sure.
Sounds like a good time.
Okay, so I will invite them in for July 8th, and I'll send you, Kathy, the
The thing.
latest red line version.
Thanks.
Shouldn't this board really be a continual thing that constantly looks at,
A living document.
yeah, that ours, constantly comparing it to communities around us? Are we still competitive? Do we remain competitive? I mean, I don't think it's something that should just be done and then they go away for another 15, 20 years until somebody says, hey, when's the last time we revised this? I think it should be something that is constantly looked at and maybe massaged
Maybe we
if
can ask them
necessary.
when they're in front of us.
Yep, and most communities do. One of the things I had on a list for an upcoming meeting to discuss with you all is I would like to get the board's support in obviously not next year, but in the following year's budget to fund a classification study and have a company, not unlike MRI, come out and actually look at all non-contractual positions and do the full salary surveys and put together a classification plan, which should be right in our personnel policy. And then that's one of the things that are updated on an annual basis. If you give a 2% cost of living, the scale at the back of the personnel policy increases by 2%. If there's positions that need to be adjusted. The crux of the document wouldn't change too much. It's kind of like where we are with union contracts now. There's not much to be negotiated because it's really all about wages. The benefits, the holidays, those types of things are pretty solid. They're not going to change too much from year to year, but it should still be looked at from time to time.
Sure.
As policies, as, things are changing. There's now the new safety workplace that we're supposed to be implementing. Some of that should be identified in the policy. So things should be changing, but I wouldn't say that, once we get the vacation and those things squared away, that really won't change from year to year.
Right. Shouldn't.
Shouldn't.
anyways.
Unless something changes dramatically in your union contracts, and then you want to see it, if you were to,
Or in
just
the
saying this,
social
like
landscape,
eliminate
you're
the
right.
sick buyback or something major like that across the board, then you may want to change that type of stuff, but.
Okay, so to go back to the agenda for next meeting, do
Yeah.
we have room for a couple more things, or we don't have room?
Yeah, it depends what kind of things and how long you want to talk. We have room.
Does anyone have anything for next meeting that they would like to talk about at all? For the next agenda? Anything?
I'm not going to be here. so
Well, we're
I'm
gonna
not
do our
attend it.
goals, so.
What's that?
Yeah.
Once we do our goals, then we know what we're gonna talk about.
Well, so do we just keep a light meeting next meeting? Do we talk about our
Yeah, I mean, if
goals?
something comes up between now and
Yeah.
we
That's my
post it, I'll
thing.
reach out
Yes.
to you, Bill.
Can I-
Sounds like a plan.
Well, we might as well have a meeting. We might as well fill the night with a, get the night, at least, my point is that we're gonna talk about our goals, but at least next meeting have some agenda items to talk about.
Yeah, and we do. So we do have agenda items, and if things come up, like I said, I keep a list, so I'll go over them with you if you want to add some of those in there. And things will come up between now and then, I'm sure, that we'll need to add on there.
Okay. Bill, you wanna talk?
I don't have anything off the top of my head, but can I reach out to you during the week to maybe add to that agenda?
Sure. Anyone can, I guess.
Just want to know if that's acceptable, that's all.
All right, so,
Just, what Bill just said, so that's my understanding, is that the selectmen time here, we can bring up agenda items, and then you and Denise can firm it up, a few days out, and that's fine.
that's all I was just asking.
Yeah,
Does
that's
anyone have
fine.
anything
Yeah, so that's
right now?
fine.
That's all I was asking.
Yep, that sounds good. I like that.
All right, so moving on, I guess we're good. So now we're gonna go to old unfinished business. Mike?
Oh, I was waiting for you to say my name.
Well, I was thinking I was gonna go that way, but I was looking at you,
You
so Mike.
surprised me, okay. Same old business, line painting in Washington Street. It's amazing how long these things take. That's it.
Okay.
Nothing's
Bill?
changed.
None at this moment, Jeff.
Ed?
At our last meeting, we brought up, I had brought up about the selectmen visiting all the town buildings and taking a look at them and see what they needed for repairs. But maybe at some point, we can get from Denise a list of all town-owned buildings so that we can start to plan that out. And maybe prior to the visits, we'll set it up, we'll have some questions from the department heads to have them answered before we look at them. So I think that would be the first step. You asked me to take that on, so we can get a list of all the town buildings, and we can go from there.
And I was gonna say, if you and Kathy, I think, do you guys go through the Washington Street building at all? Mike and Bill, have you been through it?
I haven't
Maybe-
been through it in years.
I've been
I'd
through that
love to
building in
see
Maybe
it.
that would be a thing to do. The first thing we could do is set up to have the board go through that building at one point, and they can get a good idea about the storage, because I know the town hall needs storage, and I've been through it myself. I know this board at that time said, go over and check it out. I went over and checked it out. It's dry, it's heated, but, I mean, if
I'm opposed to that right now. Let me just put it right there, but that's, I
you're
don't.
opposed to going, looking at the building?
No, I want to look at it, but I don't think we should just stuff it full of paper that people are dumping on the fly. I've been looking into, I told you I'd look into this records
No,
thing.
I'm not saying, I'm not asking
There's-
for anything. I'm just
all right,
asking for you guys to go educate yourself by looking in the building, and that's all I'm asking.
It's something that,
What was that building?
It's a water department
No,
building.
before that, what was it?
Highway garage.
Department.
No, before that. What's the history of that building?
Water department building.
You keep giving me the same answers.
Well, it's always what it's been. I don't
I
know.
don't
No, it was built,
No.
I was told it was built for some
It's-
type of
it's a his-
storage, the way it's reinforced, but I don't know what.
I thought it was some type of historic building.
There'd be an expense. If you're gonna start storing documents or anything there, you're gonna need a fire alarm system in the building. You certainly don't want a sprinkled building, which is gonna destroy some of the documents, but and all these documents that we have to be, they have to be saved, so you're probably gonna wanna,
All I'm gonna ask, if you guys can go through the building to
I've been
appreciate
through the building.
the second up on the,
I've been through
where
it.
the offices
I've
were,
been
the
through it.
heating. Okay,
I've been through it.
I haven't in a long time, but
okay.
just one thing, I'm still looking at the storage of records, and one of the things that I've come into is that the departments here should be listing the documents that are permanent storage versus non-permanent, 5 to 7 years. There should be a master list. We shouldn't just have piles of boxes stuffed in some vault or closet, and we have no idea what's in them. There should be recordings of these, and to my knowledge, the best of my knowledge, we don't have that documentation, so what is the point in moving anything out of here until you know what it is?
Well, I would hope the department head would only move the stuff that they didn't need, or was, they knew needed to be moved, that's all.
But how would they know if they haven't recorded what is in that box? Every
I don't know,
department
they haven't
should be.
recorded it. I don't
Well,
know.
I have not seen a master list of records, permanent or otherwise, for this town building.
All right, well, I'm just saying, if you guys want to go take a,
building.
so maybe we can, Denise, if we can get, if someone wants to see it, you can set up with the water department to open it for them. Did we ever get the clarification from them saying that they are going to vacate it and when they'll clean it?
Nope, they have not voted to turn it over yet.
And they haven't voted for the reason, they just haven't got to the vote, or?
You'd have to ask them, I don't know. I asked them to put it on their agenda, I was told it was tabled. I don't know the reason why.
Okay, so if you can get me the chairman of that board's name and.
Jim Sheehan.
I know,
Oh.
information,
Yep.
I'll give him a call and have a conversation with him and see what the story is, because they told me the equipment around the outside was gonna be clean, taken away, the place was gonna be presentable on the outside.
Right, but just keep in mind, the former superintendent told you that. I don't know that the commission was involved in that at all. So I
Right.
don't know
So
what their
then
thoughts
I need to
are.
have that conversation with them again to clarify what I had for the person that left town.
Yep.
Okay,
And in line with Ed's idea to tour the town buildings with the board's permission, I'd like to do a little research on the ownership of these buildings to see whether indeed, I believe we own most of these buildings, even though some departments maybe think they need to turn it over to us, that we may already be the owner of record of that building.
Sure.
Thank you.
okay, moving on, we have, is everyone else good with older unfinished business? Has everyone spoken on behalf of that? Yes, so, other items not reasonably anticipated at this posting? Starting hearing.
I don't think we have any.
Okay. Finance director time.
So I have a couple of items. The town clerk's office will be closed from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. for training on June 6th. That is a Thursday. And the office will be closed entirely from June 12th to June 14th for her to attend the Mass Clerk's training. She will be posting it. There is a notice on the website, and she will be posting it on her door. But she asked that I give everyone a heads up. Just to let the board know, the new cameras have been working great. The police have already utilized them for at least 4 matters that we know of. There was property damage at Bagnell, a dumpster fire at Bagnell, dirt bikes actually almost ran over a kid at Bagnell.
Wow.
And they have been using them to track down the owners of unleashed dogs at the Pines. So they have been working great since they've been in place, and they are definitely worth the money we spent to put them in. I would like to inform the board that firefighter Connor Hendry is reporting for active duty with the United States Marine Corps on June 1st for approximately 1 year. I'd just like to thank him for his service and wish him well in his tour of duty. He should be back to us next year, provided there's no issues, around June 1st of next year. And just lastly, I just wanted to make mention more to the residents and taxpayers and board and committee members. We have a small group of folks that think it's okay to belittle and degrade and discriminate some of our employees here when they don't like that we're following policy and process and laws. And some of the things being said are extremely inappropriate. Employees are really dealing with some very nasty comments. And I just want to remind people that, you know, we here don't make the laws, we simply follow them. I understand people have a right to come in and not be happy, but please treat the employees with some level of professionalism. We do have a code of conduct for visitors here at Town Hall, and like I said, there's just a handful, but people are used to getting their way and having things done the way it used to be, and when it's not being done that way, specifically in the area of planning, people have been really ruthless, and I would hate to lose a good employee because she's being spoken to the way she is in public meetings and after public meetings by residents, taxpayers, and even board members. So I just ask that people please show some professionalism and respect when trying to do business here in Town Hall. And that's all I have.
That being said, is there anyone that would Yeah, sure. Warrant a letter or anything, or at this point, no?
Well, I don't know what we would do. I actually have on my list to speak to the police chief about what rises to the level of harassment, because some of them I do think are crossing the line. I don't know what can be done, but I just think it's extremely inappropriate. She may look young, she may look like she just started here, but she is very knowledgeable and knows her stuff and follows the law to every letter it falls under. And they just don't like that there's now a process and there's rules to follow. And they really have been ruthless with other employees, but her specifically is really taking the brunt of it, and it's just not appropriate.
Well, if it's by appointed board members, we should know about it, bring the person in, and the sooner the better, because we have annual appointments coming up here.
Sadly, they're not appointed.
This is
they're
an
not
elected, the planning board's elected.
Elected board.
But she is appointed by us, so if we feel that, and you're reporting that there has been situations which are not professional, and where she has not been treated in her professional capacity appropriately, I believe we should issue a letter to the planning board to let them know that we have been informed on this and that we are deeply concerned. And hopefully, the
Right.
planning board will make sure that this doesn't reoccur.
But again, it goes beyond the planning board. There are just taxpayers and residents in town that are not getting their way and are not happy about it, that there's a process
And
to
again, like
follow.
you said, and
Right.
again, what happens is you now have a person in position that's running the department by the law, and people aren't used to that. And
Right.
it's, I had a conversation with our highway supervisor a few weeks ago, and he said the same thing. I'm gonna end up having some situations where people in town aren't gonna like me, I get that, and it's gonna happen. But,
It's gonna happen, but no one would speak to him the way they're speaking to her.
well, I don't know, I don't know that,
It just comes with being a female in this type of
Well-
business. It happens all the time.
Right.
But I just think, like I said, some of it is definitely crossing the line, specifically with her, and things that are being said to her. It's just not appropriate. So, again, it was just a reminder to make the board aware and to just let people know that it should not be tolerated. I told her, press the panic button. We have them for a reason. If you need them, use them, because she just shouldn't be in that situation.
okay.
Good.
So, moving on, we have correspondence, we have the Cable TV Advisory Board, cable license update to the Department of Telecommunication and Cable, and we have correspondence from the minutes from the May 13, 2019 meeting. And then we have adjournment at, was it 9:40?
8:42.
8:42. Can I get a motion?
Motion to adjourn at 8:42.
Seconded?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Woo!
You look puzzled by that, Mike. You weren't in favor of that adjournment?
Should we have
No.
Connor Hendry come in if he can before he leaves?